Okay, guys, so I sometimes forget, I always forget, to tell you what page you're writing on, because a lot of you don't have a way to print this off, and that's fine because you can just write in your notebook. But because normally we just tear stuff out of the book, but today we're not. So you need to have your notebook open to page 32. Okay. If you printed this off, great. If you didn't and can't, that's fine. You're just going to write in your notebook. Page 32 is 3.3, corresponding parts. This is a long title. It's right here. Corresponding parts of congruent figures are congruent. Move my mouse so I can actually write. Okay, and that's the title for 33 as well. Go ahead and label them both. And I have forgotten to fill in my tab forever. I'll go back and do that too. This is actually the last one on this tab. You'll get a new tab next week. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the tab that I should have been filling in this whole time, but I quit on page 25, evidently. All right, so this one was 32 and 33, and we're going to work backwards from there. This one is 30 and 31, 28, 29, 26, 27. We can make sure that actually works out. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Yep, my tab is all filled out. In case you need to see the whole thing because you're like me and you forgot, there's the whole tab. Okay, so I'm going to put my notebook to the side because I'm actually just going to work on this sheet that I have. So if you don't have a sheet, you're writing on these 2 pages. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of move that to the side. We're going to talk about corresponding parts of congruent figures, and we're actually going to cut them in a minute as well. So let's see what it says. When 2 figures are congruent, I'll highlight in blue, when 2 figures are congruent, the corresponding sides and corresponding angles are congruent. By the way, there is a shortcut for the CP for corresponding parts of congruent figures are congruent. You can only use the shortcut if you understand what it stands for. That is CPCFC. Might help if I could remember to write the C. That's what it stands for. Okay, so here's an example that's already done. It says, hey, these triangles are congruent. So AB right here is congruent to DE. These little marks mean they're congruent, as does this. BC is congruent to EF. 2 marks because they're not congruent to these, but they're congruent to each other. CA, 3 marks, is congruent to FD, 3 marks. I want you to notice something. See how they have A and B and D and E? You put them in the order that they tell you they are. A, B, C, so A goes with D, B goes with E, C goes with F. You have to put them in order. Order matters. All right, now let's look at the angles. Angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle B, it's got a piece there already, so it shows that right angles too. Angle E is congruent to angle B and E are congruent, and C is congruent to F. I do want you to put the marks in there. Okay, now let's actually do an example. Each of these pairs of figures is congruent. Complete the congruent statements. When you have something today that says write congruent statements, it's talking about these. There are 6 for a triangle. If it's a quadrilateral, there are 8. However many sides there are twice as many congruency statements, okay? So, number 1, triangle FGH is congruent to triangle LMN. So this says FG is congruent to, well, LM, because I have to put them in order of what they say, LM. And I'm going to mark it, FG, LM. The next one, GH GH is going to be congruent to MN. N, N. Then I'm going to mark it. GH, MN. Okay? NL. N back to L is congruent to H back to F. It has to be in the order. 3 and 3. There are the side congruent statements or congruent statements. Let's talk about the angle congruent statements. Angle F is congruent to angle L. F is congruent to L. M. M is congruent to G. And H. H is congruent to N. Okay? I want you to not only complete them, but draw it into the actual figure. I want you to pause the video and try number 2 on your own. So go ahead and try number 2. Okay, now that you've tried number 2, I'm going to go ahead and go through it. ST is congruent to WX. TU is congruent to XY. YZ is congruent to UV. And I forgot to mark the last one. TU, XY, UV, YZ. Notice they're not oriented the same. That's fine if it tells us they're congruent. ZW, VS. Okay, angles. Angle S is congruent to angle W. Angle T is congruent to angle X. Angle Y is congruent to angle U. Z is congruent to angle V. Okay. Now that we've got that one done, we're actually going to cut it out and glue it in on page 32. Page 32. We have another one. We're going to do it in a minute. Just go on page 32. Okay. Then the next part will go on 33. We'll get that in a second. So here's the next sheet. Okay, for the first part, we're still just listing congruency statements. Okay, so we're going to do that first. The first one says list all pairs of congruent angles and sides. Since it says angles first, we're going to put the angles over here. And we're going to put the sides here. Does not matter which one you put where, but just for consistency, we're going to put the angles on the left, the sides on the right. Okay, we don't have a figure, but that's fine. we are going to look at what it says. Triangle KLM is congruent to triangle GHI. So angle K is congruent to angle G. Angle L is congruent to angle H. Angle M is congruent to angle I. There are the angles. All right, there are three sides. KL is congruent to angle GH. Not angle. Sides, guys, sides. Sorry about that, change that. LM is congruent to HI. All right, and there is a third one, and that's putting together either KM or MK. It doesn't matter if you put KM or MK. Here's what will matter. If I put KM, then I have to put GI. If I put MK, I have to put IG. That's the difference. That's what matters, okay? I want you guys to pause the video and try two as well. Angles, sides. Okay, so you've paused the video, you've already got it. Here's what you need to know. When you're checking your work, don't start erasing you think it's wrong. You know how I've got K, L, and M? It doesn't matter what order these are in as long as they match here, okay? As long as KG is somewhere in the list, that's fine. As long as MI is somewhere in the list, that's fine. So if you don't have them in the order I have them in, that's not what matters. What matters is what it's paired with, okay? So angle W goes with angle D. They're congruent. You don't say equal, you say congruent. And if you're in class, I'll correct that. But if you're at home, I really can't. Angle X is congruent to angle D. Angle E, I can't speak. Angle Y is congruent to angle F. Angle Z is congruent to angle G. And in case I haven't said it before, I put a line through my Z's so they don't look like 2's. All right, let's talk about the sides. Just like before, it does not matter what order they're in. Some other things that don't matter. Right here, this is K, L, and G, H. If I put LK, that's fine as long as I put HG. Okay, so you might have something a little different than me. What matters is that they're both in the same order. Okay, I'm going to start with WX. WX is congruent to DE. XY is congruent to EF. YZ is congruent to FG. And remember, I can either go Z to W and G to D, or W to Z and D to G. I like going in alphabetical order, but you get to choose. There are my 4 sides and my 4 angles. Okay, then we're going to do 3 through 6. Okay, in 3 through 6, I do not have enough room to work. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to fold it up to the instructions, and I'm going to do all my work here and then just write the answers in. Okay, and we'll actually glue it in this way. You'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this says quadrilateral ABCD. Well, that means I need to draw a quadrilateral. It doesn't say it's a rectangle, so we're pretending these aren't rectangles, they just look like it. A, B, C, D. Okay, is congruent to quadrilateral E, F, G, H. That means A is congruent to E, B is congruent to F, C is congruent to G, D is congruent to H, okay? But I'm not going to write all those out. In quadrilateral ABCD, AB right here is 16. BC is 5W plus 7. Angle C is 2Z minus 1. Angle D is 50, so it's definitely not a rectangle because that's 50 degrees. It sure doesn't look like it, but nothing's drawn to scale in geometry. Okay, in quadrilateral EFGH, EF is 3Y plus 1. FG is 8. Angle G is 80. Angle H is 2x. Find the value of the indicated variable. So we're going to open this back up to C. Now that we've got our picture drawn, we're going to see what it says. Number 3 says find the value of W. Well, it might help if I could stop moving stuff around. Not number 3. Yeah, number 3, sorry. Number 3. Find the value of W. Here is W. BC, right here, is congruent to FG. So I'm going to write that equation. 5W plus 7 equals 8. And I'm going to solve for W. Subtract 7. 5W equals 1. Divide by 5. W equals 1/5. I don't want a decimal, leave it as 1/5. Okay. It doesn't tell you to find BC or FG. It tells you to find W. So I'm just going to open this up and write W equals 1/5. Okay. Number 4, find the value of X. Let's find X right here. H is congruent to D. So 2x equals 50. If they are congruent, their measurements are equal. That's why we're able to set up these equations and say they're equal to each other. So divide by 2, x equals 25. Okay, so I'm going to open this. X equals 25. Number 5 is find the value of y. Number 6 is find the value of z. I want you to pause the video and try 5 and 6. There's our picture. You're pausing. You're trying 5 and 6. All right, I'm going to keep going. Number 5, find the value of y. Where is y? Here is y. EF is congruent to AB. So 3y plus 1 equals 16. Subtract 1. 3y equals 15. Divide by 3. Y equals 5. Y equals 5. And the last one, find the value of z. Number 6. Z is here, so it goes with C and G are congruent. 2z minus 1 equals 80. Add 1. 2z equals 81. Divide by 2. And you're going to get z equals either 81 over 2, 40.5. I don't care if it's a decimal on that one. Which means I'll just take a decimal on that one if I need to. Z is 40.5. All right, I'm going to move this in case you need to see it one more time. There's all the work. Otherwise, we're moving on. All right, now we're going to talk about a proof. We have talked about proofs before, we've never really done them, okay? We talked about proofs on, let me see the page number, page 16, okay? And we're going to come back to page 16 today. On page 16, we talked about a proof and what it should look like, right? Kind of right here. We had statements, we had reasons. A proof is just explaining how you get from one step to the next, okay? And that's what we're going to do. We're actually going to write a paragraph proof, and then we're going to go back and write a 2-column proof. And then on your homework, you get to choose. You get to choose whether you write a paragraph proof or a 2-column proof, but I'm going to show you both. So I'm going to start with a paragraph proof. We're going to start by writing a paragraph. And it won't be a full, like, English paragraph because it depends on how much we actually have to prove and write, okay? All right, so we always start with what we are given. We are given, you have to tell them what you were given. I know you think that's crazy, but you have to. We are given that M, N, P, Q is congruent to R, S, T, U. And that MN is congruent to PQ. There's our first sentence. Now, do you see how it says prove MN is congruent to TU? That will be our last sentence always. We'll say like, therefore MN is congruent to TU, or because of this, MN is congruent to TU. We cannot use it except for in the last sentence. Let's think about what we need to do to get to where we need, to what we need. Okay, so we know these two are congruent to each other, and we know that this MN is congruent to PQ, okay? We need to show that MN is congruent to TU. Well, let's look first. Is MN congruent to TU in this statement? No, that's not going to help us then. But what do we know? We know already that MN is congruent to PQ. What do we know about PQ? Well, look at this. PQ and TU are congruent. That's probably going to help us. Okay, so let's go ahead and say that. PQ and TU are congruent. PQ is congruent to TU. We have to tell why, though, because why are they congruent? I'll tell you why, because you don't know yet. Here's why they're congruent. In a figure, corresponding parts are congruent. That's why they are congruent. That's what we're going to write. Because corresponding parts of congruent figures are congruent. Okay, here's what we know. We have PQ is congruent to TU. We also know that MN is congruent to PQ because they told us that in the given. Well, if MN is congruent to PQ and PQ is congruent to TU, then I bet you MN has to be congruent to TU. But we have to have a reason. And that is our proof statement, so that'll be our final thing. So like, therefore, we're done. MN is congruent to TU. We are only done when we have a reason. Your reason is on page 16. So flip back, look at page 16, the chart, and see which one says, since this is congruent to this, and this is congruent to this, these two are congruent. Now look at our chart. This one right here. It's one of these. Let's see. Is it reflexive? No. Symmetric? No. Transitive? Ooh. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Well, if MN equals PQ and PQ equals TU, then MN is congruent to TU. So it's because of the transitive property but it's not of equality, it's of congruence, because we're talking about congruence. This is our paragraph proof. I'm done because I made it to what it says to prove. Let's talk about what a two-column is. Then on your homework, you get to choose. If it doesn't tell you to use two-column, you don't have to. If it doesn't tell you to use paragraph, you don't have to. Now, if it specifically says, use the one it says, okay? Unless it says use a flowchart proof, and don't do that. That's crazy, okay? All right, let's talk about what a two-column is. We're going to take our paragraph and turn it into a two-column proof. A two-column proof literally has two columns. You have a statement column. You have a reason column. You always start the statement column by listing the givens, just like we did right here. M, N, P, Q is congruent to RSTU. And MN is congruent to PQ. That is our first step in our two-column proof. The reason is we are given that. Okay? Our first step, here's what I want you to notice, is our first sentence. Let's go to our second sentence. PQ should be putting is congruent to TU because corresponding parts of congruent figures are congruent. We're going to use the shortcut. There's our second sentence. Okay, third. Says MN is congruent to TU, which is what we were trying to prove. Why? Because of the transitive property of congruence. There is a two-column proof versus a paragraph proof. I had 3 sentences, so I have 3 rows, okay? You get to choose which one you want to use unless it says use a two-column proof or use a paragraph proof. Otherwise, you get to choose. All right, so this will fit in your notebook. We are going to cut the sides and the top piece. So we're going to cut off that top piece up there, and then we're going to cut down the sides. Okay, so it looks like this, but you can see it. Looks like this. You fold it down. Okay, you do have proofs today. Proofs are more difficult, which is why I did the whole lesson in one day so that tomorrow you can ask questions in class. Okay, so glue this in on page 33, or you wrote on page 33. Tomorrow you're working on the assignment. You can start on it today if you still have time in class. Right? Ask questions. Proofs are hard. You need to ask questions. Let me know if you need any help, and I will see you tomorrow.